Good evening and welcome back to another vlog. I apologise that I missed last weekend. I didn't have anything to post. I've said before it's quite challenging because I work full-time during the week, so trying to get out if I've got plans over the weekend it can be quite difficult. So unfortunately I didn't have anything to post last week, so that's why I'm doing this rather novel and different video idea tonight. So I'm at home, so I haven't filmed anything in this room for a while, my kitchen, where I'm based most of the time doing my work and my editing. So what I thought I would do is a vlog based around my Christmas tree, which I just got put up this week. I always really enjoy taking photos of my Christmas decorations within the tree, and I really like the kind of magical and mysterious feel that gives of getting the camera right inside between the branches and picking out all the little individual decorations that I've got. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. So I'm going to take some shots, and when I've taken them, what I'll do is I'll jump then into the computer and for once just show you how I would go about editing them. And my feeling is to try and go for a kind of mystical, like I say, magical kind of feel for the picture. So I'm thinking about using negative clarity. I'll show you what that means in Lightroom if you're not sure, and just that kind of nice warm shades to try and give that really like ethereal magical feel. So we'll come to that in a minute, but first of all let's get into the lounge and take some pictures of my Christmas decoration. Okay, so welcome to my lounge and to my Christmas tree specifically. It feels really weird doing a vlog in here, but anyway, I think for me at Christmas time the tree is one of the most important things. I think that comes from my childhood memory, so I always get a real one, and I always try to fill it with a real variety of decorations. So I've got my camera set up, I've got the zoom lens on at the moment, and I think when I'm taking these pictures what I really enjoy using is depth of field, especially when you've got fairy lights in the background. I think blurring those out as a background when you've got the ornament or the decoration in focus in the foreground can just give again that lovely magical feel. So I've got a composition lined up already with my first decoration. So I'll show you that now. I would also just like to say I've had a request from my class that I teach. I teach a year 6 class, so they asked for a shout out. So hello to my class at the school that I teach at, which I'm obviously not going to say where that is, but yes, they are big supporters of my videos, so thank you all for watching. Hope you're all okay. So let's have a look and check out our first decoration. Okay, so the first decoration I'm picking out is my blue glittery Santa here. Now that is actually a present from someone that was in my class last year, and I know sometimes he watches the videos as well, so he'll know who he is if he's watching it. So I've got Santa lined up here, again on the zoom lens. I've gone in really close on him, and what I'm really enjoying is the light that he's getting from the fairy lights that are just in front of him. Now you won't be able to see that particularly well. The thing I'm struggling with a little bit is getting the focus, because it's quite dark in here, especially if I drop the main light off now, which I'll do to just get a bit more atmosphere. It's struggling slightly, but it is actually quite easy with these. If I show you, if I zoom right in on his face, it's very easy, as you can see, just to work out where that sharp focal point is. If I try and do it manually, it does struggle. It's actually managed that fine. So I've got the branch in front of him. That's deliberate to sort of frame his face and where his eyes are. I'll probably darken a lot of this when I edit it in the computer in a minute. So we've got that at f6.3. The shutter speed doesn't matter because we're inside, so nothing's moving. So let's take a picture of him now. And now we'll jump into the computer and I'll show you how I'm going to edit it. Okay, so we've taken the picture of Santa. Now this is the first time I've done any of this kind of recording where I've got my laptop screen recording and I'm on here, so we'll just see how we go with this. And also I've never edited on video before, so I'm very scatty just in the way that my brain works, so I might not necessarily go in a particular order. I think the more experience you get with editing, you probably then stick to a similar thing. So anyway, so let's jump in and I'll show you what we're dealing with. So here's our picture of Father Christmas, looking somewhat gormless, I suppose. But I'm happy with the composition and the focus on the face. So that's what I want to do, is draw as much attention towards his face as I can. So the first thing that I'll do, so I've got all my editing tools down here. I'll generally just try and sort of make my way down them. So I always start at the top by cropping it and I'll tend to go for, no, not that one, 8.5 by 11, a 4 by 5 crop. It just seems to give quite a nice even spread of where things are. So I don't want the bottom of the belt showing there, so I'll just drag that up a little bit there, and we'll try and get his face as much into the centre as possible. So something like that will be fine. So that's looking good. Now, in terms of the white balance at the top here, I think you'll notice if I change that even the slightest bit, it gets really sort of muddy and murky, I think, because of the tone of the light. So that's not going to work at all. So I'm actually going to leave that where it is for now. I don't want to touch the tint, so that's fine. I also think the exposure at the moment is fine. You can see from my histogram, it's more towards the dark end, but I don't think there's much I would want. I'd maybe just brighten it up just a little bit there. Contrast, I would usually just up my contrast a little bit, which I'll do a little bit on here. Highlights, now I definitely want to bring the highlights down, because you'll see as I do that, it just brings out a little bit more detail in his face and just drops those lights, which I'm going to do something with the lights in a minute. Shadows, there's some fairly dark areas on the branches, so let's just brighten up just a little bit. I don't want to go right up to the top, because I still want to keep those fairly dark, because as I say, they do a nice job of framing his face. So let's just go up to about 20 to 24 on those. Whites are fine. So the next thing I'll do, I won't do this presence panel at the moment. I'll just come down to my my tone curve here, and I'll just put a bit of an S curve on. So I'll just drop this down. Now I always like to just bring my blacks up a little bit here to sort of crush those blacks, as it were. And then I like to bring the middle up to bring a real sort of nice S, because that gives just some real pop and contrast to the image there. And just drop my whites down a bit on the top end there as well. Let's just bring that down a little bit. That's gone a little bit too far. And that's good there. Okay, I'm just going to actually bring the white balance just back. No, actually I'm not, because I'll do that on his face in a bit. Right, so I'd said about putting some negative clarity on there. Please ignore my email notifications coming up. So you'll notice, so what clarity does, if I go to the other end, it tends to give you a really sort of harsh impact. So if I was taking pictures of like an urban setting or some graffiti, which I've done before, I'd go right up on that. But on this case, I actually want to go in the other direction, because you'll notice if I go in the extreme, it really softens it. Now, I don't want to take all of the feature out of his face, but just a little bit of negative clarity there. I might put a little bit of negative dehaze as well, which will just soften the image up a little bit there as well. So that's looking good. So we'll just look at the differences we've done so far. Is it going to let me do that? Oh, hang on. My computer is running fairly slow. There goes the wheel. Right, in fact, that's not going to work, because this is one that I previously edited, so just ignore that part. Anyway, that's where we're aiming for eventually. Okay, right, so I think what I'll do now, the vibrance, I'm happy with that. And in terms of the colours, there's not a lot I'm going to change here. On my greens, I'll just bring those a bit more over to the sort of bluish, but they're very subtle. And I might just bring their luminance up just a little bit. And there's just a bit of green on the side of his hat there. Saturation's fine. The yellows, let's see what happens if we... Oh, that's nice actually. So I bring the yellows more towards green. That gives me a bit more pop to the image. I like that. I don't think there's anything else I want to do with those colours at the moment. I will come down to the colour grading in a minute, but I'll do that after I've done some work, some selective adjustment. So the radial gradient here, as it's now called, I'm just going to draw one around Father Christmas's face, if it lets me do this. There we go. Because I want to draw some attention to that, and also it's a little bit warm for my liking. So I'm going to adjust that first of all. So the white balance then, I'm just going to bring it back so that he's not quite as warm looking. I want the lights and everything around him to be, but I want him to be a little bit cooler than that, so to speak. I'm going to raise the exposure a little bit. So there's just a little bit of pop. I like to raise the whites as well, because what I find that does is it raises, it brightens things without it being too harsh or heavy-handed. I think sometimes it gives a really subtle lift to the what am I trying to say? The darkness, the brightness, I suppose. Okay, and I'm having said I was going to put clarity on it, I'm actually going to take the clarity the other way, because I want a bit of definition on his face, just picking out some of those textures on the decoration so that we know it's a decoration as well. So that's all good. Right, so I'm going to put some other gradients on the lights. Okay, so I want to make them a bit more ethereal and magical. So I'm just going to draw a small one now. The good thing is I need to do this on actually one of them, and then I can duplicate it onto the others. I want it to be a fairly large feather on it. So what I'm going to do is raise the exposure of those because I want to just blur them out. I don't really want to see the shape of the lights. You'll notice as I raise that, it just gives it a bit of a softer look. I'm going to go negative contrast, which will do a similar thing. Negative dehaze, which really softens it quite nicely. Let's go up on the exposure a bit more. And it just gives it a little bit of blur around the outside. Right, I like that. And I think I'm happy to leave that as it is. If negative clarity, I'll do anything. Soften it. Oh yeah, that gives a bit of softness to it as well. If I go too far, you don't want it to look too ridiculous. Right, so what I can now do on that is I've got that gradient done. I can duplicate and just drag it over to my other lights. Now on some of them it might look a bit ridiculous if it's even too bright. So let's just, I think the great thing now is that I think when I adjust this, it actually adjusts all three of them at the same time. It does. I think I've probably gone a bit hard on the negative clarity and dehaze over here. Maybe too hard on the exposure. Let's just bring that up just a little bit. Just subtle. Nice subtle changes. That looks good. Okay, right, we're getting there with it now. The other thing I want to do, actually, yeah, while I'm in the radial gradients, I'm going to put one more. I'm just going to zoom out a bit, and I'm going to put a big one to create a custom vignette. I'm going to invert that. Just drag that around to the middle. Now my feather's a bit heavy, then I can bring it out a little bit. I really want to draw attention in on Father Christmas's face. So now, where I'm looking now is in this preview panel on the left, because that's when you can really see what difference it's making. I'm just going to drop the exposure. I don't want it to be too obvious or too ridiculous. I think that's good there. The other thing I want to do, now the other thing I've forgotten to do is to come down and do remove chromatic aberrations and enable profile corrections for the lens. Hopefully that's not going to change too much. Doesn't seem to have done anything, which is good. Oh, that's a little bit bright. Sometimes that really brightens it, but I don't think it has. Right, in my colour grading here, so my shadows, I actually want to try and mirror more of the sort of greeny tones that we get from the tree. So more around this sort of area. Let's just drag that up a little bit. You'll see what that's doing to it. And obviously I don't want to go too far with it, but just enough to just give a slight tint of green to go against the warmth, and I might just raise the luminance so we're getting a nice sort of faded look to it. That's maybe a little bit too green. That's good. I would sometimes put some warmth on the lighter tones as well, but I don't think I need to. And that's done. So I think I'm happy with that. So if I show you where we were, this is slightly, there we go. So that's what he looked like before, and with our edits. My computer is not designed for this. That's where we are now. So that's the first edit done. I'll show you that one now. Okay, so we've come down a little bit closer, and I'm pretty excited because I've spotted something really interesting. I'm joking. Obviously, I know all the things I'm taking pictures of, and I've taken a picture of this guy a few times, and it's one of my favourite decorations, and it's Father Christmas again. I think I might have said Santa before. I apologise for that. Father Christmas, who is sadly imprisoned in a jar in this particular picture, but I'll just show you him now, and I've got my prime lens on. I'll explain why that is. Right then, so here we go on picture number 2, my lovely Santa in a bottle. Again, if I haven't said it already, I absolutely love this decoration. So now at this stage, unfortunately, my phone ran out of memory and stopped recording the video. So I'm going to attempt to talk through what I'm doing retrospectively. So again, going through the cropping process, looking for a 4x5 and just looking to put Father Christmas in the middle of the frame. Click done on that. What am I going to do next? I think I am looking at contrast next. I think the exposure I was happy with, and I was talking about warming up the image just slightly to give that nice sort of magical feel. Bringing some of the highlights down there because we've got the bright lights in the background, and bumping up the shadows. This is really hard to do retrospectively, but yeah, you'll see adding that contrast really just makes the image pop quite a lot there. But the issue I was having at this point was the warmth. I was getting way too much warmth in the image, so I'm bringing the white balance down. But my thought was then thinking about the colours and looking at the greens and the yellows. But I think I'll go to the tone curve next to just bring out some of that contrast in the image after putting my negative clarity on. So that's just playing around with the dehaze as well, which what dehaze does is it takes, as it says, takes the haze out of things. So if you get quite a misty image, it's good to sort of cut through that. But by using negative dehaze, you can get quite a nice sort of misty look to your image there as well. Just looking at the vibrance and saturation, the saturation increases all of the colours globally on the image, whereas vibrance will just pick out the key colours. So in this case would be the reds and maybe some of those yellows in the backgrounds. But I think the colours are looking pretty good on that. Possibly still a little bit yellowy, a little bit muddy on the colours, just meaning it all looks a little bit sort of green at the moment, but I do compensate for that later on. Down onto my tone curve then, just putting an S in there. So just dropping down those lower tones, bringing up the blacks, and then using again that part of the mid-tones, just bringing those up to really add some, adds more contrast and sort of, pop to the image. I'm going through that. But what you'll find is that when you're adjusting things on the tone curve, you'll need to then go back up and adjust things like your shadows, your highlights, and which I'm continuously doing through this, and my white balance as well. Still struggling with that very warm tone to the image. But as I've said, I do counteract that when I come down to the colour panel in a minute. But actually I've reduced that warmth there by quite a bit. And it does, the tendency is always to put too much warmth in images, I think, especially these kinds of Christmassy kinds of images. So it's just having that awareness to get that right, which is what I'm adjusting here. So down to the colour panel, looking at the greens first of all. And what's interesting is that in this case, it's not the actual greens, despite the fact that it's green fern that I've got in it, or not fern, fir tree if you like. It's actually the yellows where it makes the big difference here. So I'm actually adjusting the yellows to bring them right along more towards the green end of the colour spectrum there, to take some of that, like I said, that sort of murkiness out of the image, which is working really nicely. So I've brought that across. And now we're looking at doing some local adjustments, which means just choosing certain parts of the image. So like I've done in the previous one, just using a radial gradient there on Father Christmas to just boost him slightly in the image. So I think I'm going to boost the whites here, which just gives a very nice subtle change, and maybe just notch the exposure up a little bit. But using the exposure can make it it can be quite heavy-handed, whereas by bumping up the whites, which is what I'm doing now, it just makes a slightly more subtle change and just makes your subject stand out a little bit. So it's something that I've found really helps with my images. I always use whites first, and if that's not quite giving me enough, then I'll go to exposure. So this is looking good now. still fairly dark on the image, I would say. And I've got things like the vignette that I'm wanting to put into that now. So just tweaking my radial filter here. I would not recommend doing a video where you've got to put the commentary in after you've done the adjustment, because it's really hard, especially if it's several hours later on and you can't really remember what you did. Okay, so I'm done on my local adjustments. What do I do next? We're going down to the colour grading. Okay, so like on the last image, putting some greens into the shadows, and just working out that right level of saturation on that. Actually, again, you don't want to give it too much of a tint as you're doing that, and just raising the luminance a little bit, which is a bit like crushing the black, so it just gives it that kind of faded look to the image, which I really quite like on my pictures. Just adjusting the tint now. My worry with the image was that it was having too much of a greeny look, but as you can see, trying to adjust that with the tint can be quite clumsy. You need to be very, very subtle with it, and it wasn't quite giving me the look that I wanted. And it's when you're editing an image, I do find that it's sometimes you know there'll be one slider that's the right one for you to work out, to move along. I forgot my chromatic aberrations and profile corrections here as well. I do that on every image because it just takes away any imperfections, and it also adjusts Lightroom to the lens that you've used. That's as best as I can explain it. But this was where it made a big difference. So I went into the yellows and actually dropped the saturation, and that's what gave me the look that I wanted. I realised that was the issue with my image there. So that's looking much better now. Not as much yellow in the background, and just giving it a more sort of balance on the colour. And now I'm moving down to just put in the vignette, which again, the idea of the vignette is always to just draw your attention into the centre of the image. Usually go to about -20, somewhere around there, to just darken the edges of the image and just draw your attention into the superstar of the image, which is, of course, our Father Christmas, trapped within a glass jar for reasons we don't know. Just looking at my highlights here to try and put some warmer tones in there, but I think I decided this wasn't needed. I abandoned that because I really didn't think it was necessary. So that's the edit finished. Apologies for the weird commentary, but here's the image for you to look at now. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to be shooting is actually something new that I've just brought today from the garden centre, woohoo, which is this beautiful, you're actually on the box for it, what's it called? An illuminated winter village. And it looks like this. So my plan for shooting this is to, again, get the zoom lens, I think, so I'll shoot from fairly far back. But I want to try and get the real warmth of the village, as we'll call it, but with some really cool colours of the window and the street outside from behind. So hoping to give it that idea of a village being in a sort of mountainous location. Goodness knows what's going to come out, but let me get the camera set up and see if we can make that work. Okay, so my plan completely changed as soon as I set the camera up and looked at it from this point of view, because you'll be able to see what's great about shooting it from here is I actually have the reflection of the Christmas tree lights behind it, which was not at all my intention. So I'll just show you into the camera here, which I've got set up. It says, there we go. So I'm focusing on the church, which is at the top of my little winter village. As you can see, because I've got the aperture down at its lowest at f5, the Christmas tree lights that they're reflected are just giving a beautiful background bokeh to that. So that's going to be a really nice magical image, and that's going to be a really nice one for me to finish on. So I will shoot that now, and you'll also notice that I've dropped my exposure down a little bit so it's not too bright, because as you can see, I might even go down a little bit lower because it's so bright with the lights inside the church. So let's shoot that before a car drives past. So it looks very, very dark on there, but I'll be able to lighten that when I edit it in the computer now. So off we go. Yo, yo. Right, last image. Screen recording, first of all. 3, 2, 1. Right, here we go then with the last image, which is the church in my warm wooden village or whatever it was called. Right, now the first issue with this obviously is the fact that it is extremely dark. So I'm going to take crop off because first of all we need to look at the exposure. So you can see on my histogram over here, everything's over towards the left, which means it's very, very dark. So we'll first of all just raise the exposure. This is the great thing about shooting in RAW, is that you can raise, you can really be quite flexible. The image is quite flexible. Now, I don't want to raise exposure too much because firstly I don't want to blow out the highlights, which are already slightly, and you can see the bits that are where there's no detail in the blacks, where it's dark blue. So the shadows is the main place where we really want to bring things up, and actually that's just giving a lovely warmth to the back of the image. We're getting a reflection of the church, and we're getting those beautiful soft reflections of the Christmas lights. Now, keep a handle on the highlights. I don't think there's too much we need to do with this because I love the tones of everything in it already. I need to straighten it a little bit. I'm going to 4x5. That's sucker. No, I'm not. I'm going to 5x7. I want a wider crop on that one, just to give a really nice. I want as much. In fact, I might. Dare I go 16x9? Be pretty wild. No, that's going to be too narrow because I'm missing too much of the house. 16x10. That's nice. We'll go with that option. I don't know if that's the one that people tend to use, but I really like how that's looking. So that's good. Contrast. Bit of contrast there. S-curve. Drop you down. Bring you up. Not that one. Crikey. That's nice. I need to go back to my exposure now because that's darkened it. So we're going to brighten the exposure. We're going to bring the highlights down more. Keeping track of those nicely. Shadows are really up to their maximum there. So there's the difference so far. Massive, massive difference. I apologise that you can see just how filthy my lounge window is behind there. But oh, it's such a lovely Christmassy little thing. Glad I bought that. The garden centre. Impulse purchase. You know, those highlights are, yeah, blowing out a little bit in the middle. There we go. There we go. Beautiful. Now that middle highlight is going to blow out because it's one of the lights. I'm not too worried about that. I really love this. I think this is my favourite picture of all of them. Do I want to change anything else? I don't want to change the tones, but negative clarity to give it a bit of magic. Oh yes, I'll just soften the inside bit there. But dehaze. Oh, that's well, obviously not that much, but I do like that magical feeling that we're getting with the dehaze there. So let's do a bit more of that, just enough. Really nice. Again, control your highlights. Just want to keep bringing that back so we're not losing any detail. Anyway, now that I've come back to it, I feel like it looks dark. I do apologise. iPhone storage is at a critical minimum at the moment. I don't know why. I need to figure that out. So hopefully this will record. I was at the end of the edit anyway, so I'll show you that image at the end. It's one of my favourite. It's my favourite one from today. And like I said, it's a lovely warm image. It's a nice miniature something with some nice bokeh in the background and stuff. I really like it. So I'll show you that in a minute. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for putting up with a slightly unusual vlog. Hopefully for the next one I'll be out in the wilderness looking for some wintry scenes. Hopefully the weather's not too horrendous this weekend. I've missed the snow unfortunately, so hopefully there'll be some more of that to come. I've been very jealous watching vlogs for other people out there shooting in that. But thank you for watching and tuning in, and thank you to any the new subscribers. The channel's growing now, and I'm really excited that there's new subscribers every day. So welcome if you're new, and they're not all videos like this. I'm sorry for the constant errors, but it's all a learning curve. So yeah, take it easy, get Christmassy, and I will see you soon.